Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to say I'm sorry that I cannot speak Spanish. My Spanish is really poor as your Vietnamese. So I know that would be an excuse. All right, and it is always a pleasure, but also a pressure to talk to students because they are so young, they are so well informed. I don't know about Vietnam yet, but you are so well informed and so quick in your recognition of the world, the region, and even Vietnam that I don't know. So when we show the video clip there, I hope that you will find some of the images familiar to whatever you have seen on CNN or elsewhere. But for the most part, I am certain that you are not very well aware of Vietnam as a country that we should be known today. So previously, when I talked to students who are interested in Vietnam, they often thought of Hollywood type of Vietnam, presented by Vietnam War and everything. But I know, looking at you, I know that you were born after at least 20 years when the last war of Vietnam with the United States ended. That means you were born after 1995 or so, right? So you are not having a very strong image of a Vietnam War. But I still would like to stress one point. Vietnam is a country of peace now. We have very good relations with our previous aggressors, we call it, like China, the Chinese feudalists, okay? They ruled us 1,000 years, all right? And then the France, the French, they ruled us almost 100 years, 80 years. And then the Japanese, and then the US. The US stayed there for 20 years, okay? So the history of Vietnam that the Vietnamese are always proud about was a very strong sense of independence, fighting against foreign aggressors. But it was a very long time ago, even before you were born, as I said earlier. But I will tell you today about Vietnam today. So my speech will have mainly two parts. Number one is Vietnam today, all right? And the second one is, as suggested by the school, I would like to talk more about Vietnam foreign trade and development. So that's what you expect to hear today, right? That's the topic that you expect to hear. But at the end of my talk, you will have the chance to have a Q&A session when you can ask me questions. But I just want to note you that I'm not an encyclopedia, so I don't know everything. And my English is not as good as he said. It's still my foreign language, but I will try my best to understand you and your questions, and I will try my best to answer them. So the questions may not be confined to or limited to the topics that I present today, but it will be confined to your strength of curiosity, okay? So you can ask any things that you like. So I think in the first part, I would like to give you an overview of Vietnam today. We are a medium-sized country in Southeast Asia, you may know that. We cover an area that is nearly double your size, Uruguay's size, all right? But we have a population of about 94.5 million people. So do the math. How much we are bigger than you in population? We are the 14th most populated country in the world. And I think 30 times more than your population, right? That's why one of the reasons why I'm so thin. Our country is like this, and we have like these people. So, all right. So that's why we always think that Vietnam is familiar to many people, but you are not familiar with the size of the country or the people. So I just give you a sense of that. And Vietnam's economy is performing well. We had the so-called Đổi mới policy, or the reform policy, or the renewal policy that was launched in 1986. That helped us to open to the world. Andre told me that you are learning to open to the world. All right, I am not sure about it because now the world comes to you, and you have to accept it. I don't know how you deal with that fact, because you can't be in your home without knowing anything, because the world comes to you through all things, internet, for example. So you have to learn it, and I really think that it's a fact that you should learn today. Because you are students of international studies, it is a matter of fact, or it's a matter of something you must do. And once you chose to be here, you are eager to learn about the outside world. That is something that I appreciate very much. And I'm also equally surprised to see the turnout. This is the biggest number of students that I talked to since I have been in this part of the world. I mean, in Argentina, in Paraguay, and Uruguay. So I am happy, but it's also a pressure, to tell you the truth. But I really think that Vietnam, when I compare Vietnam's economic development with yours, I know that you are much better in statistics, at least. For example, our GDP per capita is only 24 or 2,500 US dollars, and you is 21,000, right? Is it correct? Or 15,000? It depends on the PPP or on per capita, but your country is 15,250 US dollars, per capita, and we just 7 times lower. So Vietnam is not as rich as you in GDP per capita, and our per capita PPP, purchasing power parity, you know that, right? Only 6,200 US dollars, while yours is $21,000. That's why when I live here, I find it so costly. You are so expensive as compared with Argentina, for example, or in Vietnam. For example, one of the good dish in Vietnam, we call it noodle soup, costs only $0.50. And how much it would cost here? I will sell it for $5 here, right? Because you are so expensive. So I can make a lot of money, all right? So I think in 2018, our total volume of trade was about 482 billion US dollars, which is double our GDP. I don't know if it makes any difference between the total volume of trade and the GDP of the country, but that number shows how open Vietnam is to the whole world. We depend a lot on export and trade. You see, what we got from international market double the things that we do within our own country. So I know that Uruguay is also very exported-leaning economy. That's why we are so not vulnerable, but we are so exposed to the fluctuations of the world market. If the world market goes down, we will be in trouble because we cannot sell, or import from other countries that our country needs. So I think in that sense, we are very similar. And I think that's the first part for my overview. So it's very brief. You don't have to worry, right? And I will move to number 2, the part 2, Vietnam's foreign trade and development. as I said at the very beginning, in 1986, we started our open door for foreign policy. First of all, we try to open ourselves economically. We try to integrate into the world economically. And then, getting more confidence, we became more integrated to the world comprehensively. That means we get involved more in international affairs. We are not only following the rules that have been set by the superpowers after the Second World War, as you know, WTO, all those things, IMF, World Bank, and things like that. We also get more involved in regional affairs. So in the region, as a member of ASEAN, I know that you know ASEAN, what ASEAN stands for, right? ASEAN means Association of Southeast Asian Nations. We have 10 countries. Vietnam was a latecomer. We came there in 1995. We were late. But now, we are not only following the rules of ASEAN, but we are getting more involved in working out the rules for ASEAN, while the whole association is adapting itself to the new changes in the region and the world, so that we can be we can play the central role of in the region, in the regional structure, politically and economically. So we are getting more involved. So I would like to say that, and it really pays off. The open door policy. Now we entertain about 222 economies in the world. When it's economies, it means countries and territories. There are areas that we don't call countries, like Hong Kong, for example. So after we joined the WTO in 2007, foreign direct investments started coming to Vietnam more. To tell you the truth, before that, Vietnam was considered a communist, closed, and dangerous place to go. People still thinking of Vietnam as somewhere dangerous. If you talk to some Americans now, the American diplomats still have some subsidies from the government because if they work in Vietnam as a dangerous zone, that was a long, it's very unique and absolute policy, but they are still enjoy that privilege, So they enjoy both things. And so I think in that, when I told you about the statistics of Vietnam's development, very much part comes from the correct policies of Vietnam in foreign trade. We decided to open ourselves to the world and try to sell more things out. So I think the strong development in foreign trade has made a very significant contribution to the overall growth of Vietnam. And it helps the GDP grow, stabilize macroeconomy, curbing inflation, and improving the financial balance. Liquidation balance. And when I say curbing the inflation, I would like to tell you one more figure. Inflation in Vietnam last year was 3.54%, while our GDP growth rate was 7.08%. All right? Uruguay in 2018 growth rate was how much? Do you know? Who knows? Who knows Uruguay's growth rate last year was how much? Who knows? No? I do, okay? It's 1.6%. The World Bank and the IDB, said that expected in the first half of the year, last year, expected that Uruguay would have like 2.3% growth. But because of the, let me use it in the diplomatic way, fluctuation of your neighbor's economy, not small neighbors economy, it did affect your growth rate, all right, and your exchange rate and everything. So your growth rate went down from the 2.3 expected to 1.6 in real growth last year. So I try to say that, and then to compare with Vietnam, we have 7.08% growth rate. It's really an achievement for us. And so it's not easy to have that growth. We have kept our growth rates about 6 to 7% in the last decade. All right, it's always that way, around that number. So you may ask, what are the main factors for Vietnam to be, how we can keep our trade grow and our economy develop? I think it is not an answer for your questionnaire if you have to do the test, but I think there are three main factors. Number one, I think compared with other countries or economies in the region, in Southeast Asia, we have a rather low cost in manufacturing and outsourcing, if you will. So our country manufacturing sector accounts for 25% of our total GDP. So 1/4, right? And labor costs in Vietnam are about 50% lower than those in China, about 50% of China, and about 40% as compared with Thailand or the Philippines. So labor cost in Vietnam is rather inexpensive. That's our edge, advantages. So, and with the workforce is growing, you may be surprised to know that about 60% of Vietnamese are under the age of 35. All right. So I am the minority. You can see that, right? And so it shows that the labor force in Vietnam is growing, and we are in what we call the golden age for labor force. All right. So the second factor that helps us is Vietnam has signed 12 FTAs. You know FTAs, right? Free trade agreements with various countries and groups, including ASEAN. We are part of ASEAN too. So when ASEAN signs something, we are obliged to do the same. So we have 12 FTAs. Do you know how many FTAs do you have? Okay, I don't need that answer because, all right. So we are still discussing or negotiating 4 more FTAs. All right. And you might have heard of CPTPP or TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That were supposed to include the United States, but then they withdrew. Now we have only 11 countries, and we call it CPTPP. All right. This is technically it's called the second generation of trade agreement, which is very demanding, which apart from commodities, but they ask us a lot of work to do in our institutions, law, legal framework, all those things. So we are brave enough to sign those second generation FTAs. And that's why we accept the risks and the challenges that those trade agreements may bring. But we prepare ourselves to do that. That's the second factor. The third factor, I think the government of Vietnam trying to build or create a business-friendly environment. When I say business, means for business and for investors. So as I said earlier, the FDI, foreign direct investments in Vietnam have grown very, very highly in Vietnam, and it played rather significant role in our general growth. All right, so we do a lot of incentives. We offer a lot of incentives for foreign investors to come to Vietnam. And do you know how many Uruguayan investors are working in Vietnam now? One. It's not like this, but one. This is number one, okay? Just one. And I really think that's not fair to you and to us. You know, you are middle income country in the upper class, and why are you not in Vietnam? Okay? Maybe one of you will become an investor. All right? That's my hope. That's why I spend my time talking to you. No, I was kidding. All right. So, but I really think that it is not fair for two countries not to do more in that. Because when you invest in one country, you expect returns. And it is win-win situation. But of course, you have to overcome things like that. But that's a matter of course, no matter where you invest your money in, right? So I really think that Vietnam has become a good place for investment. I don't come into details, but this is the fact. When you learn, I don't know if he has taught you about China Plus formula. When China is having some trouble, you know, countries are considering China Plus, you know, coming to another country, not only China. So Vietnam has become one of the first alternatives for the destination of investors who have been investing in China now. Okay, and now maybe you have another question. What are the main exports and imports from Vietnam? Okay, I will give you the list. Vietnam mainly export textiles. Maybe I will check with your shoes. Maybe some of them are made in Vietnam. And when I say footwear and your shirts, all right, there are computers, electronic products and components. How many of you are using Samsung? See? Maybe turn it up and see. Made in Vietnam. Maybe. Okay? Because Samsung has the biggest manufacturing base in the world in Vietnam. All right? That's how the China Plus formula came into play. All right? So, footwear of all kinds, so your shoes, machine tools, spare parts. And when I talk about it, machine tool and spare parts are just a small part. Vietnam is mainly still manufacturing, assembling thing instead of having a supportive industry. So we are trying to change that structure, all right, to put more value-added commodities out to the world instead of just working, intensive labor. We put more value into the products that you are using. And Vietnam import what? Vietnam import mainly machinery and equipment, computers. We also import computers, electronic products and components, telephone and accessories. Do you know why? Many Vietnamese are using Apple phone. We say what? iPhone, right? And a lot of Apple products. And we are not producing that within the country. And we also import iron and steel, coal, and petrol. All right? Comes now, next question. Who are the major trading partners of Vietnam? In 2018, among the 10 biggest trading partners of Vietnam, there are 8 of them coming from Asia, the top 10. And 2 who are out of that Asia are Germany and the United States. Okay, I don't want to ask you about Uruguay's ranking there. All right, and so I will be very brief. China, you may have heard, we have very good relations with China, and China is our biggest trading partner. You know, it's very close to us. It's just like Brazil or Argentina with you. So close and so convenient. So a lot of important export and things would be to go in between that. After China is the US, of course. And then South Korea. Sorry, second is South Korea. Third is United States. Then come Japan, Thailand, Taiwan, Malaysia, Germany, India, and Hong Kong. The top 10. All right. So these top 10 accounts for 72% of our total import-export turnover in 2018, last year. The 10 countries, 72%. That's really huge. So, I have just told you a lot of good things about Vietnam, but as you know, the picture is not always rosy like that. We have to face a lot of risks. When I say exposed to the fluctuation of the world economy or challenges, I think, for example, now people are talking about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, right? And we are facing that because the low-cost labor doesn't help us with 4.0 revolution. We have to do something more. We are trying to change the economic structure so that we can put more knowledge, you know. We say the gray economy, right? And we train our workers more so that they can be more skilled, more skillful, so that they can satisfy new investors come in requiring for more skillful workers. And we also think that now there are we call frictions among the superpowers on the trade, or people say the trade war. All right, countries like us also affected in one way or another at different levels. So we have to deal with that as well. Apart from our own regions, for example, Uruguay, we have to deal with the ups and downs of Brazil and Argentina, and we have to deal with ASEAN's ups and downs and China. It's so huge. So if they have trouble, we will have negative impact in one way or another. Now I come to, I think this is something more related to you, that is the Vietnam-Uruguay trade. All right? I have these facts and data to inform you. You are, no matter what, one of the top 10 biggest trading partner of Vietnam in Latin America. Okay? Last year, just to give you an example, in 2012, our two-way trade was valued at 71 million US dollars. 71, okay? But last year, it was 140 million, double. Is it nice? Yes, right? Because I am working here as an ambassador. It's nice, all right? I can make that, you say, look, I have achieved something, all right? Report to my government. But actually, when we said that the two-way trade volume increase, who benefits? Our people, right? No matter whether we have the surplus or you have to suffer the deficit, our people in general, enjoy the value. So that's why one of our missions here is to increase our two-way traffic in trade. So I told you earlier about what Vietnam import and export in general, right? Now I will tell you what do we export here. We mainly export to you footwear, textile, computers, electronics and spare parts, rubber, something you don't know, huh? Ceramics, all right? But we import from you what? Do you know? You export to us wood, timber, materials for textile and leather, pharmaceuticals, seafood, and animal feeds. Okay? And these, when I told you this, I think these figures are very modest, and it is not commensurate to what we should do, what we should achieve. So I really think that I have a lot of work to do, and I expect that Uruguayan colleagues and friends and young people like you will help, not only in the short term, but in the medium term and in the long term, in the long run. So I wish that you would help us to do that, to improve that. And Vietnam, as a member of ASEAN, can act as the gateway for you, for your goods to come to ASEAN as a group. And I hope that you can help us to get closer to Mercosur. All right? It's a reciprocal thing. So I really think that that's the future holds bright for us. That's right. So for conclusion, now I come to conclusion. Happy for you, right? I think I hope that my brief presentation gave you very general ideas of our trade and our relations, but I would like to emphasize 2 points. One is Vietnam supports open, fair, transparent, inclusive, and satisfactory multilateral trading system with the World Trade, WTO, as the foundation. That's one thing. I know that you are support that too. So we support trade and investment facilitation, and we always try our best to create the most favorable environment for foreign investors and foreign businessmen to do the job in Vietnam. And my second last point is that we look forward to increase economic links with Mercosur in general and with Uruguay in particular. And we really think that EU can help. That's why I always look to the future. And I can see the future in you. Don't talk about myself, okay? Because I'm not the future. But I really think that you cannot have the future if you don't have people like us. We are the foundation. We help you to grow, and you build our bilateral relations to grow. And I really think that that's something that I would like to emphasize. I would like to emphasize my confidence and optimism about the future of Uruguay as well. You have been one of the most successful country in this part of the world. You are always appreciated as the most stable, democratic, country in this part of the world, and that's what we look to learn from you. We have a lot of things to learn together.
I went last year to Vietnam.
Oh.
And it really surprised me, especially the difference between the northern part of the country and the southern part, specifically between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know if this reflects in terms of exports when talking about the origin and the type of products you export.
Mm-hmm.
And the second question I have is, what were and how were the difficulties of Vietnam in terms of culture when starting to trade with Latin America, this part of the world?
Okay. Thank you for the questions. I will answer them right away so that you can have follow-up, even more difficult. All right, I think when we talk about the difference between the North and the South, your question doesn't put in the cultural context or historical context. So Vietnam now one reunified country. I have to confirm that first. But there are differences between the two parts of the country. Food, for example. All right. In the North, we eat a lot of picante dishes. But in the South, people put more sugar in it. Okay. In the South, it was still, until now, still, in the South, people are more business-minded. If you come just like him, he will notice that in the South, people are more busy, right? Busier, hectic, life is very busy, people running around. In the North, people just like me, like this, and sipping tea or something. That's the style of living. But in the South, it was under the Americans. And the life that people more business-minded, they get used to how to do services better, faster, all right? So the North is learning that, all right? We are learning that in the sense that we do the services. Previously, Vietnam was merely agriculture. But now the service percentage in the GDP is 42%. It's really huge. And that part mainly comes from the South, all right? Yeah, so you can see that, the difference. In the North, we do more policy making, just like me, like thinking, sipping tea and like that. But now the young people, the startups are all over the country. You will see the difference. You will see that we are all very busy. We are always thinking how to make money. I mean, young people like you. That's all over the country. But in the South, people have the culture, the culture of making money, being creative, it's incentive, motivated, sort of that. So, but all over the country, as you said, there are no differences about which part export which things more. No. From the outside, it looks like that, but it depends on the companies where they are located. It's not like the South and the North. No. If we have the map here, we have 3 major ports. From the North, in the middle, central of the country, and in the South. They are all the same as the port for international trade. So it doesn't make any difference. All right. The second question is whether the difference in culture creates difficulties for us to do business here, or for you to do business in Vietnam. Yes, there are. First of all, Vietnam, for example, has 1,000 years history. 2 or 3 years, 1,000 years. You are, as compared with Vietnam, you are a child, You are like 300 years or so, right? Or 200 and 300 years, and we are thousands. So that's the difference. Very distinctive, very visible. When you come to Vietnam, you will see a lot of things very old, antique, and you would like to buy a house to sell it here. It's a lot of money because it's 1,000 years old. And the way that we act is different. We are Asian. All right? So we are not, as I told him, we are not Caucasians. So we think differently, that's true. However, we have to notice the globalization trend. People are now more similar in many ways. We are fed with the same information on the internet, provided that we both can read English. Okay? Because I know that many do not speak English or read English in many parts of the world. But if and even in Vietnam, not everybody speaks English. So, so we are more alike these days. But it doesn't mean that we will take for granted the differences in culture. Many people, okay, I'm not talking about a particular country here because it's a diplomatic way of not naming names, but there are countries that coming to Vietnam and were surprised to see how fast the service is there as compared with the services here. All right, in their own country. I'm not saying you, okay? You means you are contented with waiting in the line for 15 minutes before being served. But Vietnam, no, 5 minutes, or I will go to another shop. All right? But here you just say, and you turn out, and you're just like waiting for the bus for 15 minutes. Oh, no way. We can take a taxi. We grab Uber, sort of like that. We save our time running and things like that. So I am surprised when when I come here and I am served very slowly, especially in restaurants. It's not because of the dish cook. It's just because of the relaxed way of serving that you have, not you, okay? That you have, and you start your day late, for example. You start at 8 or 9. In Vietnam, it's 7. I always had to get up at 6 or 5 in the morning, bringing my kids to school, running wine and things like that. But here you just say 8 o'clock and the kids 8:30 go into the bus school, and you take it very, very slowly, and I love it, So one of the things that I said that when I come to Latin America, talking about culture difference, is that living in this part of the world teaches me how to adapt to a gentle pace of living, where people balance very nicely between workload and personal life. And enjoying life is part of our lives. We didn't know how to do it. We worked so hard, like workaholic. So because agriculture farmers, they work from 3 o'clock in the morning until very late. That's part of our culture. We get up early and went to bed very late, and it's part of our culture. And we get up early too, but not going to bed late and then get up late. No, we get up early. So that's one thing that businessmen or foreigners should be aware of. We work very hard. The Vietnamese are very hardworking. You will find that, and even the youth are very hardworking, and they are very eager to learn new things. So that's why our labor force is improving a lot since the arrival of Westerners, arrival of foreign investors. They teach us how to put our long day of working into more fruitful results, good results. So that's one thing we learned.
I used to be working for an Asian company, international company, and I would like to know what about your country thinks about the agricultural business between Uruguay and Vietnam?
I think we are mainly agriculture economies, and I really think that. But your products are not similar to ours. For example, beef. We eat beef a lot, like you, but we don't produce as much as you can. So, and your beef is much better. Just don't tell my country, okay? But your beef is much better. So I really think that, and you have things that we don't produce as good as you, like. Here I find not only in Uruguay but in Argentina, because this part of the world, you have very good oranges, mandarins, and blueberries, strawberries, all those things, and the difference of the weather. All right, because when we are summer here in Vietnam, it's winter, so it's so different. So we can be complementary to each other instead of being competitive. So I really think that if that's part of the question.
I would like to know about the rice business.
The
Rice business.
rice business. I understand that Uruguay is a great producer and exporter of rice. And I don't know whether this is a good or bad news. We are the second or the third rice exporter of the world. So, yes.
Which kind of grain?
Rice.
Yes, but I mean in short grain, medium grain.
Mainly short grain.
Short grain.
Mainly short grain, yeah. So I myself enjoy eating Thai rice. And in Argentina, I enjoy eating Argentinian rice, which is the seeds, very similar to Japanese. It's very good. The aroma is great. I love that for a change. When I come back to Vietnam, I will eat Vietnamese.
I would like to know which of the following has helped to foster more the development of Vietnam: the Asian organization, trading conventions, or internal or bilateral, let's say,
Trade agreement.
trade agreements. Thank you, with other countries. Which of those has helped foster more development in Vietnam? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. This is a very technical question because he's trying, if my understanding is correct, he's trying to see whether bilateral trade agreements help more or than multilateral trade agreements help more for Vietnam. Actually, as a country that depends a lot on import and exports, one of the thumb rule, we say it, is to diversify the destination for your export and the sources for your import. Because if you are depending solely on one supplier, when that supplier suddenly get ill, you are going to get sick too, right? So one of the thumb rule of Vietnam is to diversify all those sources and destinations. One of the first thing we do is do bilateral, because it's easier to deal with one country than with a group, because you have to deal a lot. And within the groups, they will say something about us, they don't agree with this and that. However, we have a very experienced team of trade agreement negotiators. So for us, no matter what, bilateral helps, but the multilateral agreements do help, because when you reach that, the reach out is much larger. All right. For example, we are dealing with EU, Vietnam EU, European Union. If we do that, we can reach out to all 26 members of Europe. All right. However, we don't think that Vietnam EU trade agreement is much better than Vietnam US bilateral trade agreement. We don't put it on the scale like that. Whichever help us, it helps. So we don't put on the scale whether we put on all multilateral on the one side and the other. But I really think that with today's globalization, when you reach after a tough negotiation process, reaching, for example, Vietnam EU have very significant role in improving Vietnam's trade balancing or trade in general. It helps a lot because the market is just open. That's why we signed the CPTPP. 11 countries, we do it because it helps us to go to Mexico and Canada. These two countries do not have bilateral trade with us. The rest, 8 other countries, we do, all right, but not with Canada and Mexico, for example. We can get, into Mexico and Canada without getting a bilateral trade agreement, because we had that multilateral already. So it helps, you know, at different sides. So we look at strategically, we think dealing with a group is good, but tactically each country is fine too, as long as you cannot reach that high with this. You see what I mean? Okay, great. Thank you. Oh.